Hello and welcome to the Year 4 School-Based Training Briefing for Mentors in School. All about introductions, expectations, complications, because I'm sure there will be, and aspirations. My name's Chris Robson and I'm the School-Based Training Cohort Leader for Year 4 here at Manchester. One of the two Chris's. My colleague Chris Bentley is the Cohort Leader at Crewe. So, we're about to embark on our partnership work together for our final year students. And they are such a wonderful bunch of students. Who are they? Well, they're students who are generous, committed, keen, aspirational, and rather anxious. And indeed, their anxiety is because they're committed to aspiring and achieving. They want to do their best for themselves and for your children, and they see you as one of the most important people in their teaching career and in their development for the professional attainment during this placement. I suppose for many of us, you probably remember the teacher, class mentor who supported you on your final placement. You're hugely significant. So I suppose I'm very privileged to be speaking to the VIPs of the partnership, the experts in that classroom, the experts in that school, the experts knowing those children, the very person to be the gatekeeper to open for our students to that professional setting. Okay, so what are the students anxious about? They're anxious that you might think that they're the finished product. Not yet, on the way. Next step, hopefully, is their QTS. They want to learn and they want you to support them, but they are only at the beginning of their final year placement. But they have a lot of prior learning that's going to put them in good stead. So, what is that prior learning? Last year, for Year 3, the students had already been engaging with the full breadth of the standards. They've been working across the full range of the curriculum. So in a sense, this final year is very much to do with consolidation, development, extending that range and breadth, but they've already begun. And in fact, we have some really, really good results for this cohort from Year 3, where across the board they achieved 89% plus on their final assessment as good and outstanding. So we've got something really positive to work on. So the development in Year 4 is very much to do with the expectation in terms of the proportion of time that the students will be teaching. At the end of their Year 3 placement, they were responsible for 60% of the teaching. In Year 4, they're hitting the ground running in many respects at 70%. But that 70% could be with groups, sometimes with the whole class. You can stagger it. But by the interim, they need to be teaching 70% of the whole class curriculum for the duration. Okay. Our success rate then for Year 3 was 89% good and outstanding. And what are we aiming for? You've probably guessed. 100% good and outstanding by the final report. As that significant person, what are we going to do to support you in that process? The process of enabling and facilitating that quality learning in our students. Well, let's have a look. The first thing, I suppose, is to tell you where you're going to find all of the documentation, guidance, helpful support, even a few more films just like this one, will be at our partnership website. Colleagues have fed back to us from school that they found the resources here so valuable, and it's an easy click away that you can really access easily. And here is the address. So you find lots of links for this in the documentation, but clearly you need to get to the website first. So here you go. We've asked our students if they could perhaps prepare a little electronic file for you that would have this in, but just in case, there you are. So on the website, what are you going to find? Very first thing, statement number 1, the general school-based documents. Now this is worth a browse through, even though some of these are going to be generic, not necessarily specific just to year 4, but I think you'll find them of use and of value. But where you're heading and where you're going to be most interested will be the year 4 section. And the year 4 section is statement number 5. Okay. So when you get to statement number 5, you'll find that there are details there of the whole placement in the year 4 school-based training handbook. You'll also find records of lesson observation, you'll find the report form, and you'll also find, helpfully, a completed report form. And as you may well know if you've done this before, we have embedded into the report form the standard requirements, and we have our grading descriptors, which range from grade 4 to grade 1, that will be used at the interim visit in the 4th week of the block and at the final visit. So I think it would be very useful to have a look at that exemplar before you even get going. And apologies to those of you who've got lots of experience in this and have many exemplars yourselves. To the Year 4 School-Based Training Handbook. Scroll down to page 5 and you'll find a list of key dates. The students have already had their briefing, the tutors have had their training, and the students will be with you on Monday for their first full preparation week. On Thursday afternoon, 2nd of October, if you have Manchester students, there's an opportunity to be able to come in to have a briefing yourselves, and that will be from 2:30 to 4. Though many of you may find that you don't want to leave your class, and you'll be able to have a look at this film to help you along anyway. The preparation week 2 is university based, in that the students will be with us on the Monday, but the rest of the time is made free for them to really concentrate on preparing, researching, getting their planning ready, setting up their contextual analysis from the work that they've done in researching what school are expecting, where their children are up to, a lot of the information that they'll be asking you about next week. Should you wish for your student to come in to show you some of their planning, that's perfectly acceptable. But we hope that'll give them a bit of time to really get on top of things before they start the main block on the 13th of October. And the block itself runs for a total of 8 weeks, including 1 week for a half-term break, up until the 12th of December. Now, we've asked for the students to make contact with their university tutor by email by the 17th of October with information of the context, the targets that they're setting. But before that, we're actually arranging for them to meet with their university tutor, and they come in on the 6th. Those university tutors are there to support you. They're also there to assure our quality, and when it comes to our first key assessment date, which is in the week beginning the 10th of November, you'll get to meet that individual. They'll be contacting you before that, of course, to arrange the visit, but that's the week when they will be working alongside you for a shared observation, to look at evidence together, to think about the sorts of judgments that you are already beginning to make about the students and their attainment at that interim point. So the university tutor will be visiting to support your judgments, quality assuring the first assessment point at interim. You'll be using the grading criteria and the report to make judgments about the student's attainment against the standards at that point. We would ask that you prepare the report discussing features with the student as part of the continual evaluation and support for their ongoing learning and professional development during the block. So at the interim visit, you'll be sharing a joint observational part of the lesson with the visiting tutor, looking at evidence together so that you can come to an agreement upon where the student has attained at that point best fit against the standards, grades 4, 3, 2 or 1 at the interim stage. Bearing in mind they still have another 4 weeks to be developing. So we would ask that you would have had conversations with the students about their progress before the interim, and I'll talk a little bit shortly about that step-by-step approach before you reach that assessment point. But perhaps one of the important things to consider here is prepare a draft electronically of the comments that you want to make at interim, highlight the best fit areas that you think describe your student against the grades. Be ready to discuss that with your tutor, and then you can both agree those grades. Now, hopefully, there will be many students at that point who are already demonstrating good achievements, grade 2, against both planning and teaching. There may well be elements of oneness starting to shine through. If this is the case, then the 70% curriculum and teaching that we're expecting from our Year 4 students could increase in the final stages of the block to 80%. And that's to reflect that we're in transition from being a student teacher heading towards that qualified teacher, that newly qualified teacher. So if this is the case and your student is already achieving at interim good or outstanding in planning and teaching, and you feel that they're making really good progress, then in the final 2 weeks of placement they can be teaching 80% and working simply with the weekly planning that the school would normally use. Little bit getting a feel for what it will be like when they have their first post in September. So how do you get to that point, that first assessment point? It'll be a process that you'll be very, very familiar with, but it helps you just go through some of those steps and stages. Okay, so each week we would ask that you make a formal observation with your student. It can be very, very helpful listening to colleagues when they're sharing practice to actually prepare for that. Prepare yourself for that, prepare the student for that, and perhaps even book in the specific time. Gives everybody confidence, means that everybody can have their resources ready and the student knows where they're working. Clearly you'll be discussing progress every day in all sorts of ways, but that formal observation across the block covering the range of curriculum subjects, specifically in core, but also 2 foundation subjects. We would also ask that you arrange for yourself or a colleague to be giving direct feedback in the phonics workbook for 3 phonics teaching observations. It's been really fruitful in the past, and the students began this in their 3rd year, so they'll be very familiar with this. Now, sadly, there will be occasions where there are students who perhaps are not making the progress that we would anticipate for them. Those students who you don't have the evidence yet that they are satisfactorily meeting requirements. If this is the case, please ensure that you make that judgment in consultation with the tutor of a 4. This identifies that the student is at risk of failure and it brings with it particular entitlements. If this is the case, there will be an at-risk pro forma to complete, which is on the website. There's also an example of completed one to help you, and this is where the student would need really clear, specific targets that are agreed with yourself, the university tutor, maybe support staff, could be with your professional mentor in school, so that they're very, very clear about the actions and steps and requirements that they need to put in place to enable them to move forward from being at risk of failure to becoming satisfactory and hopefully even good by the end of the placement. There's 4 weeks to go. If you are in any doubt about the students' achievement, please place them at risk, because the entitlement it brings is an additional visit from their tutor, and there will also be a visit from a senior moderator in the penultimate week. All of these enable and give support to yourselves and your professional mentor for the judgments that you're making. We're a team, and it's really important. Additionally, some of our students may be carrying requires improvement. Now clearly at the interim there'll be many students who will have areas that they're going to be developing and improving. But if we have any students where the whole cell is requiring improvement, we would ask that you look very, very carefully and specifically again on what it is that that student needs to do to move themselves with your support into the grade for good by the end. And we have some support documentation to help with that. So, what happens if something's going awry and alarm bells are ringing before even the interim? Intervene. Intervene and get in touch with your university tutor, and they will come in for an additional visit and we can complete an early intervention record. There's a really helpful video clip on the website that can give you some support if this is the case for you. So, documentation, weekly observations, discussing with the student where they're up to against the grading criteria, setting targets for them and with them, working towards the interim assessment, and then finally working towards the final agreed assessment. We're aiming for 100% good and outstanding, and working together, I'm sure we will be able to achieve this. So thank you so much for supporting our students. Any queries, please get in touch, and would you just remind them that I've got a clinic on a Monday night all through placements where they can email me, ring me or come and meet me. Thanks a lot, good luck.